but one of him was too much. He was so bad he got kicked out of Catholic school in the 4th grade. The summer before he started high school, his dad sold the store and he moved the family to Arcadia, which was a upscale white neighborhood in California. So he went from a junior high that looked like a prison and was filled with young hoodlums to a high school where all the boys looked, dressed, and acted like Pat Boone. Steve loved high school, not the schoolwork, but the social life. And he never missed a day of school. However, since he never did any of the work, he didn't have enough credits to graduate. But that was okay with him because that meant he got to spend another year in high school. If you've ever seen the movie American Graffiti, that was his life. He loved cars, girls, and drive-ins, both the burger joints and the movie theaters. After high school, he was hired as a mail boy at an aerospace company, and he worked his way up into the purchasing department. He worked for several aerospace companies as a purchasing agent and a manager. He joined the California Army National Guard and told me lots of stories from his life as a soldier, such as the time he orchestrated a complete military funeral performed by his military unit for a field mouse he found dead in their barracks. He married Susie St. Thomas in 1962, and they enjoyed their life. They made day trips to Vegas, they built a vacation cabin in the mountains, and they had poker nights with their friends. After many years, they decided to settle down, buy a home, and start a family. But soon after moving into their new home, she passed away from leukemia. I met Steve 6 years later. He was still grieving over her death. I said to myself, wow, he really loved her. I wish someone would love me like that. We started dating even though I broke all of his dating rules. He didn't date younger women. I was 13 years younger. He didn't date women with children. Mine were 5 and 8. And he didn't date women who had odd working hours. I was selling furniture at the time, and I worked nights, weekends, and holidays. In fact, our first year together, we had 5 days off together. He told me right away he was never going to get married again. He could not bear the thought of losing someone again. And I said, that's fine. I said, I've been married once. I don't want to get married again. And so we just simply enjoyed each other's company. No expectations, no putting on fake fronts, no pressure. We were both just ourselves and became best friends. I think that's why our marriage lasted so long. We could always be ourselves. Obviously, we did get married. Susie's brother was one of Steve's best friends, and he was the best man at our wedding. His best man and his wife had gotten married in Hawaii, so they said, we're going to Hawaii, why don't you guys come with us and get married? And Steve looked at me across the table and said, do you want to do that? I said, okay. And so we went to Hawaii and got married. This is my wedding dress. This is my wedding picture. On our wedding trip, we stayed in Honolulu, but we made reservations for one night on the island of Kauai. because we were getting married in the Fern Grotto. So we flew there just for the one night. And in the morning of our wedding, I pulled out my wedding dress. Come on in. I pulled out my wedding dress, and he had a matching shirt that matched my dress. And he got out his white pants that he was going to wear, and he held them up. And he looked at me and he said, "Where are my white pants?" I looked at him and I said, "You're holding them." And he said, "No, these are your white pants." And I said, "No, I didn't pack my white pants." And he said, "Oh, uh-oh, I guess I did." Then he held up the pants, and they had an elastic waist, and he held them in front of himself. And I looked at him and I said, "No." And he said, "Hold on." "Why not?" He said, "The shirt hangs out over the pants. Nobody will know. It doesn't have a fly." So he slipped my pants on. And if you look at our wedding picture, you will see Steve in my pants. He often stated, "I wear the pants in this family, but they're my wife's pants." Steve loved to travel, and we did a lot of traveling in our motorhome, including a 9-week trip to Alaska. We visited Germany twice because I have 2 sisters living there at different times. We went to the island of Sicily in Italy because his family still lives in their 300-year-old home. We paddled canoes, we skimmed across lakes in kayaks, we cruised on luxury ships, and we floated around on houseboats. Our travels often led us to Tombstone, and Steve fell in love with this town. One late night back around 1996, he'd had a few drinks in Big Nose Kate's. He stumbled out the door into the middle of Allen Street, stared up at the moon, raised his hands up to the sky, and howled, "I love this town." And from a bench across the street, 3 teenage girls yelled back, "We hate this town." When he retired, we moved to Tombstone in 2005. He was so proud to be elected as a councilman and mayor pro tem. It was one of the highlights of his life. One of my dreams was to own a horse again. But Steve bought me something better. He bought me a mule named Tanya. Many of you probably remember seeing him riding her into town with his serape and his flat-brimmed black hat. He rode her in parades with the cavalry. He loved that old mule. I've written magazine articles for years, but one day Steve surprised me by stating, "I think I'm going to write a book." And he did, titled Yankees Boys of War, which is right here. It's a swashbuckling historical tale of a young boy's rite of passage as he worked on a military ship in the 1880s. It's a great read. Unfortunately, the publisher went out of business. Steve was one of the kindest, most compassionate people I ever knew, and I'm a better person for having known him. He couldn't watch a TV commercial about kids with cancer or abused animals without tearing up. And he was always donating to good causes. He was a passionate Republican and loved following politics. In California, he worked on Reagan's election committee when he was running for the governor of California. Family was of utmost importance to Steve. He worried about and loved my kids and grandkids as if they were his own. His health problems began way back in the 1990s with open heart surgery. Over the next 35 years, he had 7 heart bypasses, 5 stents, femoral artery replacements in both legs, neck surgery, diabetes, COPD, and stage 4 cancers in his lung, liver, and bones. I called him my modern medical miracle. One of his doctors called him a truly great fighter. I believe he lived as long as he did because he didn't want to leave me alone with no one to care for and protect me. Steve was a lot of things: a husband, a stepdad, a grandpa, a traveler, a karaoke singer, a councilman, a mule rider. But I think he'd really like to be remembered as a storyteller. He loved spinning a good yarn for anyone who'd listen, just like his dad. And I'm hoping some of you will come up and share stories about him. But before that, I'd like to ask our mayor, Dusty Escapol, to come up and receive a framed picture of a newspaper article about Steve and the grant he wrote to redo Fremont Street. My hope is that it can hang in City Hall or Shefflin Hall as a memorial to Steve. It's in the front. Sorry.
You guys didn't go through this, but
Yep. I hope it will hang in Shefflin Hall as a memorial to Steve and his love for this town. Thank you, Mayor Escapol. And where's Dana? You wrote it, right?
Yes.
She wrote the story. I'll finish up with one last story about my husband. Every day he'd go to the post office to pick up our mail. And on the way out the door, he'd say, "I'm going to the post office to make sure my picture's not up on the memorial wall." Sadly, today it is. I want to thank all of you for coming. And now I'd like to give the mic to my son. And my family's going to share some things, and then I'd like to open it up to everybody. Thank you.
Hello. I also wanted to say thank you so much for everybody for being here. I know that no thanks are necessary, but it is very nice to see you all. I'm confident that if Steve were looking down, we would be very appreciative of seeing us all gathered here. So, thanks for being here. I met Steve when I was so young. My mom just clarified. I thought I was 6. Apparently I was 5. So thank you very much for that. Curiously, one of the first memories that I wanted to share from being a very young child and having moved in with Steve into our new home is a memory of lawn mowing day. So most of us didn't get a chance to witness Steve mowing the lawn in the 1980s, but I will tell you, this is a thing, right? So this was a consistent thing, and Steve would start with a American flag bandana tied around his forehead, right? So it's like a landscaping Rambo. We also had a very nice dress shirt that was rolled off at the sleeves. and tucked into cut-off jeans shorts, complemented by white sneakers, right? So as a child, looking out the window over the sink and Steve out in the front yard mowing the lawn, I didn't exactly quantify it at the time, but I knew that this man was a legend. I wasn't wrong. Steve gave us so many unforgettable moments over the years. Shooting mushy pumpkins in the backyard at night with paintball guns. Going to play paintball games with Steve and coming home covered in purple and red welts and loving it and not being able to wait to go do it again. Steve and my mom took us all over the place. We went on motorhome trips. We loaded up our bikes, brought us along, and let us roam free when we got wherever we were going. Looking back, that may or may not have been the safest thing, but nobody really knew any better back in the day. And again, if Steve was looking down, I would want to tell him that we made always good choices mostly. So Steve gave us freedom. Steve took us to the Grand Canyon, took us on rafts, took us on houseboats, took us shooting, taught us about guns and mini bikes, and how if you're going to do something, to do it right. Anyone that knows Steve knows that Steve knew everything. Just in case you heard me say that Steve knew a lot of things, let me specify, he didn't know a lot of things, he knew specifically everything. Steve knew about history and airplanes and cars and ships and the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Marines. Steve knew about politics and government and cars and how companies worked and how people worked. Steve could tell you a trivial fact he read in the newspaper 2 decades ago and recited almost word for word. Steve knew about dancing and telling a great story. Steve knew about making good egg salad sandwiches. And Steve knew about organization. Steve was enthusiastically and almost intimidatingly organized. So as a child, in our house, Steve had a giant metal rack with shelves on it full of VHS tapes, right? Old movies. I mean, he must have had 100 movies in there, just one after another, all in alphabetical order. Like, these are big shoes to fill as a kid. You look at these, you're like, I don't know. Steve especially knew about Armor All. So if anyone's ever been in a vehicle that Steve's owned, you would know that that vehicle looks like it's in better shape than the day it rolled off the lot. So if you ever sat in the front seat and were across the dashboard, there's nothing. It was perfect. When I was a kid, Steve drove us around in an all black Trans Am that was exactly like the Knight Rider car, which was the coolest thing in the world. And on the back of it, the license plate just said, drunk. It's a real thing. Like, talk about cool, right? Just kind of random, but one time, Steve took us to the Queen Mary ship, right? Obviously, the Queen Mary is from England. And when we got there, as we were getting on the ship, they gave us these little pins that you put on your jacket or your shirt, and on the pin had a little crown. And so we're walking around the ship, and at some point I noticed, and I look up at Steve, and I'm like, hey Steve, your pin's aren't upside down. And he looks at me with this weird smile on his face, and he says, I know. And it was then that I learned that Steve knew that democracy was better than monarchy. It was this little thing, yeah, it was this little joke. I didn't get it at the time, and when I got older, I made a note of it. I'm like, yeah, you were right. That's good. Steve didn't like cats, but he let us have a cat. Steve did not want another dog, but he got us a dog. Curiously, cats liked Steve. So anybody that knows anything about cats, this will make sense to you. Steve let me learn how to drive in his cars. There's one time I was learning how to drive, right? So we're driving in Steve's Jeep, and he's sitting next to me. I think I'm merging into a lane without really looking. And I got so close to hitting this car. Didn't do it, everything is fine, but I looked over and Steve was gripping the side, absolutely silent. I know that he wasn't very happy about the situation, but he didn't get mad. He didn't really say much. It was just kind of fun. Steve was always there and always took care of all of us. He never stopped taking care of us either. When we grew up, I lost a vehicle and Steve hitched up his Jeep, drove to Albuquerque from New Mexico and gave it to us. So we had a car. I know that I'm also not the only person that Steve was giving Jeeps to. He just wanted to make sure that we were okay. My mom had told me something recently that really stuck with me, which was, Steve got me everything I ever had on my bucket list, my whole life. And sure he did. Of course he did that. Of course he did. That's who he was. I didn't always understand as a kid the things that Steve did for us. I have a much better idea today. I know that I'll probably have an even better idea years from now. But Steve worked hard to give us a good home, to help my mom pursue her dreams, and still always had time to play chess with me after school and take me to Chuck E. Cheese. It's good memories. Steve really did know everything, but most of all, he knew it was good to be alive and living our lives. Good to see you guys, Walker. Steve knew that it was good to be alive and living your life. I know that the reason we fought so hard to find every doctor, prognosis, and prediction and expectation was because he loved us and fought for every week and every day and every hour so that we didn't have to say goodbye. And as we celebrate his truly remarkable life today, I know that as we're doing the things that we can't do, that we can honor him by carrying on some of that legacy, how we treat each other and our children and our friends and our family, and that we can continue to make the best memories that we can. That's all about it. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Jonathan. I am the grandson of Steve. I wanted to start out with a quote from John Lennon. Talk low, talk slow, don't talk, and don't say too much. Steve is the opposite. Steve is a great storyteller, and if there's two things that I really about him the most, he's a true gunslinger and a phenomenal storyteller. He also loved to travel, and between my writing and him, we explored a lot of the world, and I learned a lot about family, protecting those who love and care about, and just so much. I learned so much from Steve, and to think that he was my step-grandfather, I didn't see him as that, but I also had a stepfather. Most of my life, I didn't meet my father for about 15 years. And I love my stepfather, his name is John. But a lot of the things that I learned in life, I learned from Steve. Like, he taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me how to hit a shotgun shell with a 22 at 50 yards away. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for every moment that I have with Steve. I moved, our family was very divided geographically, and I didn't communicate with Steve as much as I wanted to in a later portion of my life and of Steve's life. And if there's one thing I can say to everybody here is, if you love somebody in your life, just make sure that you reach out to them and make sure that they know that you appreciate them and love them. That's what I got. Yes, thank you.
I don't know if anybody else in the family wants to go up and talk.
Alright, it's not prepared to come up, but hi, my name is Brendan, I'm his granddaughter. I think that with Grandpa, one of the things that he taught me the most is that family's number one. Family's always number one. No matter what you're going through, family's always number one. And I always remember every single time that he would visit, we would always sit on the couch and we'd always be playing Wii bowling. Everybody would be playing it. We get so in depth when he's sitting there just watching. And it's so funny because he's not playing, but he's just commentating. And you can just hear him from the back on the couch and he's just like, oh wait, what is it, like a turkey? For free? Yeah. He's all turkey, he's all, oh, it's a shrine. And it's just like remembering all these memories. He'd always text me. And he'd always check up on me. And he'd always wonder what I'm doing in school, how I'm doing. He'd always wonder what's going on in my life. And I always appreciated him so much for that. He has inspired me to go to the Navy. Just seeing everything that he's done in his life. It really has inspired me to do a lot more with mine. He always smelled like cherry cough drops. Always. That's one of the main things. And I remember every single time someone walks past me at work with those cherry cough drops, I'm like, that's Grandpa. I don't know, I wasn't prepared to come up here. I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm so thankful for him and that I got to spend as much time with him as I did. And then I have memories that I can always look back on with him. And I'm so thankful that he taught me so much. He taught me everything that he did. And I think that he'd be proud of me. I think he'd be proud of all of us and everything we've done. And everything we're going to do and everywhere we're going to go. But that's what he'd be proud of us. He's proud. He's very proud. Yeah, thanks for listening to me. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, if there's anybody else that wants to say something,
Well, for those that don't know a lot about me, I've been the mayor on and off since 2000, and I knew the day that Steve came into town because he made sure he had introduced himself to me. And I thought it was only appropriate for me to stand up here and tell you the family and some of the friends from Tombstone just how much Steve dedicated his life to Tombstone. Steve was on the Historical Preservation Commission. At that time, they called it a Historical District Commission. He was a councilman, he was a mayor pro tem, and above all, he was prided himself in being able to write grants. He wrote a grant with ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, for a beautification program on Highway 80. I said, Steve, what's beautification mean? He says, we're gonna make it look good. I said, it looks good. No. So what you see today out there with the planters on the side of the road and all that was from a grant that Steve had got from ADOT. And he worked diligently with it time and time again. He was after more grants, more money. He was a good friend, he was a good neighbor, and above all, he was a good citizen of Tombstone. And I hope the family understands just how much the city of Tombstone and I, as the mayor of Tombstone, recognize what he did for us. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good afternoon, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pat Kelly, and I spent 18 years with the city of Tombstone. And when Mayor Esquivel opened the Public Works Office, I was also the addressing administrator for the city of Tombstone. One sunny morning, I get a phone call. A gentleman introduced me, and said his name was Steve Troncale. I said, do you have any relatives in the Navy? Because I was stationed with Lieutenant Junior Grade Troncale on the ship I retired from, USS George Philip. He said, no. So we got to talking, and I gave them the address that he and his wife Karen had to build their home on West Allen Street, across from the cemetery. Steve also knew my late wife, Anne Marie, and my late mother, Bernetta Radecki, when they and my children all worked at Boot Hill Cemetery. Steve spoke at my mother's funeral and had a lot of wonderful things to say. He thought a lot about not only Tombstone, the community, but the people here. And he always took time. No matter what he was doing, whether he was riding his mule in a parade, or on a major weekend, or just uptown, or whether he saw you at Circle K, the post office, or wherever, he always took time to say hello. He always took time to ask how you were doing, how you were feeling. He took an interest in each and every individual in this community. And that is a mark of a true gentleman who loves the community he lives in. And I think, personally speaking, this is what he brought to the table and what all of us can take from Steve in his legacy of life. And family members, I can tell you personally, him being involved in the community and taking an interest in each and every individual is, to say the least. You can be proud of your dad and your grandfather for this. And Karen, got a lot of people here who love you and care for you too and support you. And Steve was just a wonderful guy, and he definitely will be sorely missed, to say the least. Thank you all.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Susan Schuford, and I met Karen and Steve in like 2008, I guess, when we moved here. And of course, Karen and I rode together a lot. And Steve, I'm just gonna tell you, my truck is in the parking lot. You can do your diligence. And why I say that is because one time Karen and I were off riding, and I come home and we get back to her house, jump in my pickup, and I'm like, holy cow, what the heck? my truck was totally clean from top to bottom. And if you know my pickups, you would know that this is no easy task. But anyway, and I started to bring egg salad because Steve always hated brown eggs, he would tell me, but my chickens, of course, didn't know that. So I would bring him egg salad, and he always said how delicious it was, but I never told him they were brown eggs. Because I kept trying to convince him, it doesn't matter, they're all the same, but Steve did not buy that. So anyway, but Steve, we had such fun together, going to restaurants and stuff, and I love to talk politics with Steve because I'm kind of a political junkie. We didn't necessarily agree because I'm not a Democrat, don't throw anything, but I am a conservative and I am more of a libertarian. So we would kind of argue a little, but I loved hearing Steve because he was the greatest storyteller. That man could tell the greatest stories, and I loved having those stories and just the memories and the cherry cough drops. I remember that, and his little cigars. So anyway, I just want to say, Steve, we were all so much better having known Steve and having had the time and having spent time with him, and I wish we could have more time with Steve. Thank you for having us all together, and Steve, we will miss you. See you soon, or we'll see you. Maybe.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for coming. Please take time, look at all the pictures. I bought way too many cookies, so I have baggies over there. Take cookies home. We have tea and lemonade if you want to hang around for a while, have cookies and tea and talk about Steve and look at his pictures. But I appreciate all of you coming, and thank you very much.
We have the first thing in common. So I always mentioned you. So I was like, oh, I should introduce myself. So it's nice to meet you. You did great.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Mayor.
You betcha, sir. Thank you.
she's right. They got a lot of photographs up here.
Yeah, yeah, we do.
Is that you?
No, that's our grandson, or his grandson.
Whose
That's
grandson?
my sister's son. So his grandson.
Your sister.
Yeah.
Your sister's. Oh, you're her uncle.
No. Oh, yeah, I would be his uncle, Grayson. I would be
Yeah.
Grayson's uncle, yes. Yes. I'm going to squeeze by you. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's because I'm a slacker, and I didn't get back to her. I was in correspondence with her over a week ago on this, and I was waiting to hear from Tammy Jo. And when I finally did, I was busy, and I should have texted her right away, but I didn't. So I'm glad you texted me. Tammy didn't want to break the relationship, so there's a big fire. It could happen Sunday. It's after.
I look back and make sure saddle horns are all in line, and stirrups, and then I close my eyes.
Yeah, my grandson is a good man.
No, I agree.